address. Keep your hands up and follow orders. This is the FBI. We have a warrant for...
They handcuffed me and my wife out here. They wanted me to sit on the curb while they were carrying this out, something that I refused to do. They wanted my wife to sit on the curb out here, that she refused to do.
As I was coming out, this big old drone met me.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
You need a breach? What do you need?
Need one.
I don't know.
Let's hold that with money.
Hold
Thank you.
We will build a movement of white people that says hands off the Uhuru movement.
They see in the African People's Socialist Party a vanguard for the struggle for the liberation of our people. They see that because not just what we do here in the United States, but because we had the temerity to do like Garvey, to do like Malcolm X, and take the struggle of black people around the world.
Uhuru comrades, Uhuru to the people's struggle. My name is Mwezi Odom, and I am the chairperson of the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign, the counter-offensive fighting back against the U.S. government's attacks on Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru movement, and the people's fight for the liberation of Africa and African people everywhere. And before I continue, I want to welcome up my co-chair and comrade, Chair Penny Hess, who is the chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Uhuru, comrade, great to see you.
Uhuru, great to be here. Uhuru Chairman.
Uhuru, comrade, very great to be here. And we are here today because we are discussing counterinsurgency, the war without terms, and the U.S. colonial states whose wages, the states wage against colonized people when we rise up for our freedom and our self-determination. And, a part of this, struggle, we want to continue to salute the heroic Palestinian people who are fighting on the front lines of this struggle and this resistance in this day, and who are undergoing a fierce counterinsurgency waged by the U.S.-backed settler state of Israel. And we want to salute the support of the peoples of the world who are on the side of the Palestinian people. Of the 189 countries which are a part of the United Nations, 140 stand on the side of the Palestinian people. And today's program, we have a very exciting program for you today. We are very excited to have and honored to have with us on this day, revolutionary professor, activist, and author Ward Churchill, who among many other things is the movement expert on COINTELPRO and who wrote 2 important books on this subject. So we'll be hearing from Professor Ward today. We also want to welcome Comrade Don Lawson of the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee to give us an update on the struggle to free Leonard Peltier after nearly 50 years of brutal incarceration as an Indigenous freedom fighter and political prisoner. So we want to welcome Comrade Don Lawson as well. We also want to welcome another member who was fighting with the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee, Attorney Michael Kuzma, who was the attorney for Leonard Peltier and who has fought for the release of volumes of FBI documents regarding the U.S. government's attack on the American Indian movement. So salute and welcome to you, Comrade Attorney Michael Kuzma, as well as we will also be hearing from a statement from another one of the attorneys for Leonard's case, Comrade and Attorney Jennifer Jones. We also want to welcome Compañero Francisco Chavo Romero from our fraternal organization and dear comrades of Unión del Barrio, which is the organization of the Mexican, liberation struggle here on these stolen lands in this settler colonial state of the U.S. So Uhuru, comrade. And we are always honored to have with us our leader of the African nation who has fought for the liberation of African people in unity with the liberation of all oppressed and colonized peoples, and who is one of the Uhuru 3, that is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. So Uhuru, comrades, and we're just going to give you a quick update and overview for those of you who are just joining us about what this fight back is all about. This fight back is brought to you by the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition. We are building an anti-colonial free speech movement, and we are waging the battle of ideas that will ultimately win in this struggle. And we must continue to take full responsibility and pride, comrades, in winning this battle, as we indeed are winning. So I want to just tell you who is the Fight Back Coalition. The Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition is a non-sectarian, anti-colonial free speech coalition to make the demand to drop the charges on the Uhuru 3 and to defend the right to freedom of speech. This coalition was founded on July 8th, 2023, and our coalition continues to embrace the struggle for self-determination, liberation, and freedom of speech for African, Indigenous, and all oppressed and colonized peoples and their voices all around the world. We want to salute all of the organizations. This is just a partial list of the organizations and individuals who have made the call to unite and join the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition. You can do this today by going to handsoffuhuru.org/coalition and click the join button. And we want to continue to salute these organizations who were at the founding meeting and those who have, joined on after and who unite with the resistance, struggles of the colonized people, the working class, to lead our own struggles and to push back against the colonial state attacks for our shared liberation, civil and human rights for self-determination. So this campaign was initiated on July 29, 2022, when the FBI waged a violent attack on the African liberation struggle. And so this is what the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Fight Back is about. And for those of you who don't know, Uhuru means freedom. So we are indeed fighting for freedom, and we are pushing back the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party. I want to salute the relentless leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, who are leading this struggle in the, in the ideological, through the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s, trying to confuse what is the question. The chairman has brought clarity to this anti-colonial struggle, and through the work of Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela has built relentless institutions of our over 50 economic institutions in helping us to actually have a tangible understanding of what freedom can look like in this lifetime. We are not waiting for a liberation, we are building now, and I really want to salute the chairman and deputy chair. We also are very honored, as always, to have our members of the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee. We will continue to bring this case, to the people, so that those of you who don't know, that we are saying not one more year, we will free Leonard Peltier in this lifetime, in this year. So I want to salute those comrades as well. Again, on July 29, 2022, at 5 a.m. in St. Louis and 6 a.m. in St. Petersburg, Florida, the FBI launched violent military raids on over 7 Uhuru movement properties. And this was an attack, as we said, on the African liberation struggle. And we understand that their main target was Omali Yeshitela, who is the leader of this struggle and has built the African People's Socialist Party to negate colonialism, to negate the colonial mode of production, and to build real economic and political power in the hands of the African working class. And after these attacks happened, there were 4 members of our movement who were named as quote unquote unindicted co-conspirators. And what this meant was that, we couldn't take this, we couldn't take this whole case and this attack to the courts. We had nowhere to denounce these raids, but through our own, programming and through our own ability, which the party has built. And so we put this out in the world, and making the claim that anybody, what they tried to do in this process was that anybody who was fighting on the side for liberation and freedom was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. And it wasn't until April of the following year in 2023 when the FBI decided to indict 3 members of our movement with these bogus charges, who are now facing up to 15 years in prison each. That is Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville, who are known as the Uhuru 3. So we want to just really salute those comrades. And this whole, process is to denounce and to remove, and to drop the charges on the Uhuru 3. And I want to also salute our legal team of the Hands Off Uhuru, because we have been in a fight since July of, 2022, to, again, as we said, put the state on trial and to recognize that the case of the Uhuru 3 speaks to the future of free speech for all. And this was, this case in particular will test the limits of the U.S. government's ability to suppress political speech. And it is a case that continues to threaten to establish this, precedence with profound and dangerous implications. And if Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru 3 are convicted, it will open up the gates for the U.S. government to charge anyone for any speech that they just simply don't like, and alleging that this speech, as in this case, was, spoken at the behest of some foreign government, and simply on the basis of the views of the speakers that don't align with the U.S. government. So we want to, encourage everybody to go to handsoffuhuru.org, read the court documents, read the motions to dismiss that have been filed from our brilliant, legal team, and, continue to take this case out in the world, because this case is indeed out in the world. We want to salute those from around the world who have, sent us messages of support, who have come to our webinars, who have donated, who have helped to build this case, to build a global anti-colonial free speech movement. If you are not already connected to the Hands Off Uhuru movement, we invite you right now to go to our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or, Twitter, as well as TikTok at Hands Off Uhuru, or you can go to handsoffuhuru.org for more information. And comrades, we are preparing for trial. The trial date is set for September 3rd, 2023. We want everybody to go to handsoffuhuru.org/trial and click the green button to, sign up. Let us know when you're going to be there. We are expecting a month-long trial, and this Fightback is our opportunity to continue to use what we have in the hands of the people, which is organization. This is one of the main weapons that we can continue to use against the, against the state. And part of building this organization and this fight back includes you. So go to handsoffuhuru.org/trial, because again, we have to raise in phase 2, which you will hear more from, when we begin to open it up for donations. But don't stop now. You can go to handsoffuhuru.org/donate and help us reach our goal today of raising $2,000 towards the Hands Off Uhuru legal defense, because this legal defense is what is going to help us wage a serious fight back in the courtroom. We have already raised, the first part of our phase 1 goal, which was over $250,000, and we have a lot more to raise, and we're going to do that. We want to salute everybody who has donated to this fight back. So I'm going to turn it back over to Comrade Penny. And again, if you have not already, you can go to handsoffuhuru.org/donate. Help us reach our goal. And we want to salute you, Comrade. So that link is being put in the chat wherever you are viewing from. And Uhuru, Comrade.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman Wazy. And I want to join in welcoming everybody here today, and to say what an honor it is to be here with Chairman Omali Yeshitela and all of our esteemed and powerful guests who are incredible leaders in their own right. And I want to just go through a basic PowerPoint on what is COINTELPRO, what is the counterinsurgency, and why every time the African Liberation Movement, the American Indian Movement, the Indigenous Liberation Movement, and the Puerto Rican movement, other oppressed and colonized peoples rise up. The US government wages a war without terms against them. And this is what is the context for the attack on Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru 3. So let's open up that PowerPoint and just want to say, this is, next slide, this is our event today, COINTELPRO Exposed. Again, I salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, our leader, and I am a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the organization of white people under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party, and just salute the incredible leadership of the chairman and sending true white people from solidarity behind enemy lines. So it's an honor to be part of the African People's Solidarity Committee and under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Next slide. And I salute Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, who is the deputy chair of the party. She's an amazing, powerful leader and the coordinator or architect, as we say, of the Black Power Blueprint. Everybody's got to come to St. Louis, if you haven't yet, to see the transformation of the building of real African workers' power right here in North St. Louis. Next slide. And this is a powerful time when the anti-colonial struggles are rising up, not just in occupied Palestine, but throughout Africa, in Niger, and other places throughout the world, in Congo, where Africans and oppressed and colonized peoples are struggling for their national liberation. Next slide. And the chairman has taught us that colonialism is the main contradiction in the world today. Next slide. The colonialism is the violent occupation of a whole people by a foreign and alien state power for profit for the colonizer population. Next slide. And this includes colonialism inside the borders of the United States as well, for African, Indigenous, the Mexican population, and Puerto Rican people who are struggling for national liberation right here inside our borders. Next slide. And the chairman has taught us this understanding of what he calls the colonial mode of production. And it's really important that we internalize that and we understand that there's nothing pristine, there's nothing separate from the fact that everything that is produced, all access to wealth, even the experience of democracy, even the ideas in our heads are based on sitting on a pedestal of colonialism, of genocide, of the stolen land of the indigenous people and stolen African people and their labor right here. So this is what the chairman calls the colonial mode of production. Next slide. And we salute the heroic Palestinian liberation movement that we see right before our eyes, struggling to be free, to have their land back and to liberate the Palestinian people. Next slide. We salute the heroic African liberation movement inside the US and around the world. Next slide. We salute the Indigenous liberation movement. Next slide. And we salute the Mexican liberation movement inside the borders of the US and throughout this hemisphere. Next slide. The struggle of the colonized is for power over their lives. Next slide. And when the colonized fight for power against US colonialism, the colonizer launches a counterinsurgency. Next slide. Counterinsurgency is when the colonial state attempts to destroy the resistance of the colonized. Next slide. The counterinsurgency is a war without terms. It is nothing, it is not, there are no rules of engagement that are used by the US government or the colonial powers. It can do anything it wants to the colonized, and it does. Next slide. The Black Revolution of the 1960s forced the US Congress to hold church committee hearings in 1975, which exposed that the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and the IRS worked together as agents of the colonial state to wage the war on the Black Power movement of the 1960s. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, the church committee showed that one of the main COINTELPRO goals, besides the points that we will read in a minute, but one of the main goals was to prevent or disrupt the exercise of the First Amendment rights by the colonized. And that is what they are using to attack the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru movement today. And it also came out from the church committee that COINTELPRO type activities do exist today, can exist today, under the rubric of, quote, investigation. And the Black Power movement is targeted by COINTELPRO as a Black nationalist hate group. And COINTELPRO type activities are justified by the FBI under the guise of investigating hostile foreign intelligence activities on American soil, quote unquote. Next slide, please. The church committee documents reveal that the junta of militant organizations, JOMO, led by and formed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela in the 1960s, was targeted by COINTELPRO. It is one of the organizations listed in the documents. Next slide. And that the 1966 COINTELPRO goals include prevent the coalition of militant Black nationalist groups, prevent the rise of so-called Black Messiah, prevent violence by neutralizing Black leaders and organizations. And we know that neutralizing means murder. Discredit Black leaders and organizations, prevent respectability, and prevent the long-term growth of the Black movement, especially among the youth. These were the stated goals by William Sullivan and J. Edgar Hoover for the COINTELPRO program, which began in 1973 and supposedly ended in the 1970s, but is continuing today in a different form. Next slide, please. The CIA counterinsurgency programs, other programs known as the Family Jewels, also MK Ultra, which there's books about that people should read. They carried out assassinations and the overthrow of African leaders. They used drugs. They used mind-altering drugs and techniques and poison and all different ways to assassinate the leaders of the African liberation movement, including Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and many more. Next slide. The MK Ultra, again, the CIA used drugs, poison, mind control techniques, torture, and assassinations against national liberation movements around the world. This is a book that you could read about the MK Ultra. Next slide. Using the police as a military force is a tactic of counterinsurgency and COINTELPRO. The Omnibus Crime Control Bill of 1968 began and started federal funding of local police departments and trained them as counterinsurgency forces, including SWAT teams. Clinton and Biden's crime bill of 1994 put 100,000 new police on the streets, and mass incarceration has skyrocketed. Next slide. And counterinsurgency is the context for the July 29th, 2022 raids on the Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. Next slide. The FBI has always targeted African organizations, including in 1919, shortly after the formation of the FBI, Marcus Garvey's movement, who led a movement of 11 million African people around the world with the slogan Africa for Africans at home and abroad, was targeted by the FBI. Next slide. In the early 20th century, Ida B. Wells was targeted by the FBI for her fight to end lynching. and white mob violence. Next slide. Paul Robeson was charged by the FBI with being a Russian agent. His passport was taken away through the CIA, and through the CIA's MK Ultra program, he was drugged while in the Soviet Union, which led to his death. Next slide. W.E.B. Du Bois was targeted by the FBI as a Russian agent when he was in his 80s. Like Chairman Omali Yeshitela, his passport was confiscated while he was in Africa, and he died in Ghana. Next slide. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton were assassinated by the US colonial state. Next slide. In 1973, the Black Panther Party members of Assata Shakur and Sundiata Acoli were targeted by COINTELPRO. Sundiata Acoli was only released as a political prisoner after nearly 50 years in prison just very recently, and Assata Shakur escaped to exile. Next slide. Leonard Peltier and the Indigenous struggle, the American Indian movement, were targeted by the FBI, and Leonard Peltier has been in prison also almost 50 years. We must free Leonard Peltier now, not one more year. Next slide. James Baldwin, Aretha Franklin, Sam Cooke were targeted by the FBI for their support for the Black Liberation Movement, for the Black Revolution of the 1960s. Next slide. Huey Newton was assassinated by the US government in 1989. Also part of COINTELPRO, the Uhuru movement led in organizing his wake, his funeral, and a tribute, mobilizing the African masses of Oakland, and neutralizing media slander. That was a very powerful movement. This is a picture on the right of huge demonstrations that were held during Huey Newton's funeral in Oakland in 1989, led by the party. Next slide. Chairman has stated that the US government imposed drugs and the war on drugs and mass imprisonment of African people as part of the US counterinsurgency against the African Liberation Movement. Next slide. Chairman Omali Yeshitela faced constant threats in his life, and he faced repeated political imprisonment during the 1960s and 70s. Next slide. And in 1978, shots were fired through the door of an auditorium where the chairman was speaking in San Francisco, California, sponsored by a white left group. Next slide. In the 1980s, the chairman's family van was set on fire, and in a clear assassination attempt by the colonial state. Next slide. Counterinsurgency did not end. This is the context of the July 29th attack on Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. Next slide. So hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. We will fight, we will win, we will push back the state, all out to the trial on September 3rd in Tampa, Florida. Uhuru. And let's raise the $2,000 today. Uhuru.
Yeah.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairwoman Penny. That's, very helpful in terms of, what we understand is, this historical attack, like since Africans were first, attacked in 1415, we understand that there has always been a struggle of resistance. And so, this colonial state takes on many forms. And I think it's really important that you were able to help us, see just an overview of COINTELPRO and the counterinsurgency attacks on the African Liberation Movement, on the American Indian Movement, and on all liberation struggles as well. And so, to help us deepen this, and before we help to deepen this, I want to just unite with Chairwoman Penny's call to help us raise those $2,000 towards our legal defense. You can do that by going to handsoffUhuru.org/donate. That's handsoffUhuru.org/donate. And now, like I said, to help us deepen this understanding of the colonial mode of production as it exists as COINTELPRO, I'm really excited to bring up and introduce Professor Ward Churchill. who is and continues to be a very powerful force to have on here, a revolutionary professor and author of numerous books on COINTELPRO, including COINTEL Papers and Agents of Repression. And I want to welcome up Professor Ward Churchill, who's going to give us, and like we said, there's so much to be said on this topic alone. And Ward is the person who can really lay it out. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but we do want to really appreciate Comrade Ward, who's going to discuss counterinsurgency and how is COINTELPRO a part of this. So Uhuru, I see you now. Uhuru, Professor Ward, great to have you on. And just wanted to open the floor for you. And there's a lot of applause going on here in Zoom for your presentation. So Uhuru, Comrade.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Well, COINTELPRO, the incept date officially was 1956. Termination ostensibly was in 1971. By termination, J. Edgar Hoover, who was still alive at the time, and he was director for life, so he was in charge, he ordered discontinuation of using that caption in what amounted to secret files. This was never intended to be publicly known. It was secret because it was, technically speaking, at least, illegal. It was utilizing, as Penny Hess just indicated, any of a range of targets to effect the neutralization of organizations and individuals that were considered to be threatening, destabilizing, undermining the status quo ante in the United States. And she indicated quite correctly that murder, assassination, was among the techniques that were employed. They used surrogates for the most part. Agents themselves did not pull the trigger, but they enlisted individuals or co-opted individuals into carrying out these murders. But while those are some of the best known cases, when you are referring, for example, to Fred Hampton, and should also, when you say Fred Hampton and the assassination, mention Mark Clark, the Peoria defense captain who was killed in that raid, along with him, murdered. When you mention Martin Luther King, of course, when you mention Malcolm X, should be when you mention Bunchy Carter and John Huggins in Los Angeles, and the list could go on. Assassination as a technique for neutralization, elimination, it speaks for itself. Once you're dead, you're gone. You can be converted into a martyr, as a number of these people have, but that's not the same as having those people available to galvanize and lead a movement. That's, however, not even necessarily the main thrust of COINTELPRO. We've heard mention lately, and again, correctly so, of death by incarceration. That is, putting people in prison and holding them in prison on sentences lengthy enough that they die in incarceration. We have this compassionate release program going on right now. The Fed's attempting to redeem the image that is created by this. But, you know, Ulick Mantulu Shakur was released after almost 40 years in prison and died within 6 months. Their rule of thumb is they anticipate you living not more than 3 months after release. You're so sick you will not be able to do anything of a political nature once you're gone from the prison, that is, once you've been released. Lorenzo Bauer, who was paroled 20 odd years ago, and then the parole was withdrawn because there was an objection from the wife of a dead park ranger that he supposedly killed. Now that case, like most of these cases, won't hold up even to minimal scrutiny. But, you know, having been paroled and then the parole rescinded, he served another 20 years. He just came out and he's sick. Michael Poindexter died in Nebraska. He was sentenced to life in a killing of a local cop in Omaha, along with David Rice, who were the principal leaders of the Black Panther chapter there. They were sentenced to life, and the governor of the state and the parole board both said there were no circumstances under which they would consider release. They both died in prison. David Rice, Mondo Wilangi, is preferred to be known, died some years ago. Poindexter within the last year. We can continue in this vein as well. Sundiata Akali, as was mentioned, was released after almost 50 years, but he was in his 80s and, suffers a sort of mental decline and so forth that usually attends advanced stage. Not always, but quite often. And if you spent 50 years in prison prior to being released in your 80s, the chances of mental deterioration are correspondingly increased. Virtually all of the tactics and techniques that mark COINTELPRO, and incidentally, you can trace the roots of COINTELPRO, the inception of it, which occurred in 1956 as a secret classification of FBI activity, can be traced back to the Marcus Garvey campaign, or the campaign during the same period, 1919, 1920, in that period, by the FBI against the African Blood Brotherhood, among others. Virtually all of the progressive Black organizations, Ida Wells was mentioned, they were all targeted to a greater or lesser extent. Garvey was among the most heavily targeted, but you have this interaction between the Bureau, federal authorities on the one hand, and white civic organizations, so-called, and that leads to, or corresponds to, the so-called race riots of the period, which happened in Chicago, which happened in East St. Louis. There was the event, the Holocaust event, actually, in Elaine, Arkansas, Tulsa, and so on. Hundreds of Black people suppressed to be cowed into basically, not exactly acceptance, but to some extent, intimidated acquiescence in domination, the structure of white supremacy, Jim Crow, and all of that. So COINTELPRO predates the utilization of the acronym, and incidentally, again, you can trace it back before the 1919-20 period, J. Edgar Hoover getting his start and all of that, to the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which was effectively the FBI. It was a contract private entity to perform the investigative and enforcement functions of the Justice Department at the point where the Justice Department was created, the immediate aftermath of the war between the states. So into the 1860s, and the techniques of assassination, utilization of civic organizations is a term they usually use, meaning the Ku Klux Klan and organizations like that, Bold Numbers in Arkansas and so on, to maintain order. Unruly whites have been subjected to this as well, although predominantly, overwhelmingly, the targets have been the aforementioned organizations and individuals of color seeking self-determination, decolonization, and so forth. That goes along all the way through the history of the FBI and the antecedent history of the FBI. 1971, you see a discontinuation of the caption, the acronym, if you will, cryptonym actually, since it was a secret program. COINTELPRO, it's discontinued, but the techniques and the I don't even know what to call these other than campaigns. They're essentially military campaigns conducted at low intensity register. That's low intensity as compared to airstrikes and so on. They, with a few exceptions like Philadelphia against MOVE, have not resorted to airstrikes and artillery within the United States, but low intensity warfare is a technique taught by the military. FBI has been the predominating entity in waging this and putting this together, but what you see materialized there under COINTELPRO is the actualization of what is called Plan White by the U.S. War Department, as it was known during the First World War and carried on now Department of Defense. But Plan White, there have been iterations periodically. It gets updated. Essentially, it is an overview of a structuration where federal agencies, as well as local and state police agencies, these civic organizations, patriotic organizations, overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly reactionary and overwhelmingly racist, these are the organizational ties that are cultivated in this rubric: National Guard and the military. Okay, you've got all of these ingredients and various combinations thereof will be applied to civil disturbances, insurrections, as they term them, insurgencies, as they term them, resistance, basically. That's been going on throughout this entire period. It is ongoing. Much has been said about the Church Committee in the middle 1970s having revealed the illegal activities up to a point. They don't acknowledge the assassinations. They simply point to the FBI having, in some ways, created the context in which the assassinations occur. They always blame other entities, private entities, and point out that investigations were wanting in some of those. With the American Indian movement, you see this Plan White materializing even as the Church Committee is meeting. Now, the Church Committee determined that the discontinuation of COINTELPRO was not a discontinuation at all, that they had detected several ongoing campaigns. They didn't name them, but the campaign against the American Indian movement was one of them. And in that one, you had death squads functioning on the Pine Ridge Reservation that resulted in upwards of 60. My own count is 69. Members and supporters of the American Indian movement killed outright. This is a rural application of the plan. Garden Plot, as it was called, that's the code name of this particular one, which you had the National Guard, the U.S. military as consultants, U.S. Marshal Service SOG teams, Goon Squad, as it was called, which was Guardians of the Oglala Nation. That's what that goon supposedly stood for, which was essentially an enforcement mechanism that was responsible only to the tribal chairman that had been installed by the feds in order to effect a land transfer that was opposed by the traditionals on the reservation. That's the whole context and bloody mayhem in which Leonard Peltier's conviction arises in the effort to defend the traditionals from assaults by the goons and the FBI, for that matter. You end up with the 2 dead agents, and more importantly, because it's never mentioned, Joe Stuntz, Killsright, who was a Coeur d'Alene member of the security team that was securing the Jumping Bull property against attack by goons in BIA police and white vigilante groups and so forth during the summer of 1975. So you see this carry on against CISPES, Committee in Support of the People of El Salvador, during the 1980s. 100 plus organizations taken under investigation for being in opposition to the Reagan policy in Central America. And you find it applicable against Environmental Liberation Front, Animal Liberation Front, and similar environmental organizations in the 90s. And it carries on to the present time. The operations against Muslim community being a primary example, but not the only example. You find FBI and police in coordination, infiltrating or any organization with a progressive bent in the United States, with a special emphasis on communities of color, whether that be Palestinian communities, broader Muslim communities, South Asian communities, the domestic Black, African descended community, the indigenous peoples and reservations and urban areas around the country, Latino organizations for the, as was mentioned, Puerto Rican Liberation Movement, the Chicano, the Barrio Liberation Movements, the idea of domestic settler state and internal colonization being the formative structure of the United States. There's much, much more can be said about this, but you have essentially a police state that is shaped well enough, that is masked well enough, that it functions without a number of the visible symbols of police states elsewhere in the world. But if you look, they're there. You can find them. COINTELPRO is simply one, very important, but not the only operational agenda by which these goals of maintaining the white supremacist colonialist order is maintained in the U.S. And with that, I think I'll stop for now. I think I've pretty much used up my time, but free Leonard Peltier, free all political prisoners, and stop the trial of the Uhuru free.
Uhuru. Wow, Uhuru, Professor Ward, just really want to salute that presentation and just unite with the call to free Leonard Peltier, drop the charges on the Uhuru 3, and to continue to deepen and add to our vocabulary, to our understanding of these historical attacks, all of what you mentioned in terms of the attempt to neutralize movements through assassinations, through political imprisonment, and through these various apparatus of the state, as well as something that you mentioned that really stood out to me in terms of how did you phrase it? Well, it reminded me of something that Malcolm X had said, was that, the United States understands that they can never win another war on the ground. And part of it is because of this, of this movement, of the people and the colonial state having to use its, its attack on the people through airstrikes and these other forms as well. And so just really wanted to salute your presentation, and I hope you will stay on for question and answer. And before we move on, Penny, I just wanted to, really shout out and announce where people are tuning in from, who were able to hear that presentation and the overview. I want to salute those who are joining us from Los Angeles or the Tongva lands, as well as Buffalo, New York, St. Louis, Missouri, St. Petersburg, Florida, also Namibia in Southern Africa, Collegeville, Pennsylvania, occupied Azania, also known as South Africa, Tunis as well, welcome comrades, as well as Gainesville, Florida, Portland, Oregon, and Fayetteville, North Carolina, and Cleveland, Ohio. Uhuru, Brenda, Uhuru, everyone for joining in. We really want to appreciate you for being on. And I don't know, Penny, before we go, I just wanted to also announce that we are getting closer to raising our goal today. We have a goal of raising $2,000 towards the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense. And I just wanted to salute some of the names of those who have contributed and who have heard the call. I want to thank Don. I want to thank Susan, Maureen, Allie, Bree, Kitty, Ruby, and Scott, and MQ, and Chess, and Chessie. All of your donations have gotten us much closer to our goal. We are at $1,540 raised. Let's keep it going, comrades. Go to handsoffuhuru.org/donate, and we'll get a chance to thank our donors and their amounts later on in our program. So back to you, comrade, and thank you again to Professor Ward. Uhuru.
Uhuru. I think it's just backwards, I just want to say, but we're going to get there. But we have raised 460 and we have 1,540 to go.
Oh,
we will win. We will do this.
we will win, and this is why you need a co-MC. Comrade. Yeah, that was...
We're going to get there in about another 15 minutes. We'll be there.
Yes, we will. Uhuru.
That's an expression of idealism.
yes, you gotta make it happen now.
I just really want to join in thanking the revolutionary professor, activist, and author of incredible books, Ward Churchill, for participating in deepening this question and just showing some of the scope of U.S. government's counterinsurgency against, as he said, mainly targeting the struggles against colonialism inside the borders of the United States. So thank you again for being on. It's an honor. And it is my honor next to bring up Comrade Don Lawson, who is representing the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee, the case of Leonard Peltier, going to be talking to us about upcoming parole hearings and other new developments of this this incredible fight to free Leonard Peltier now, not one more year. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you, Comrade Don, and you will be giving a statement from your committee. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you all. I've been frantically taking notes. The omnibus crime bill, we are up against the largest colonial police force in the world, and it was not supposed to be that way. First up, I'm going to be reading a statement from Jennifer Jones, Leonard's lead attorney. And the reason that she cannot be here, everybody thinks lead attorney is this coveted position. There are a lot of moving parts to parole, and she is living in a pressure cooker and a meat grinder at the same time. This is from Jennifer. Greetings, Chairman Yeshitela and Chairpersons Odom, Hess, and Neville. On behalf of the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee and the National Lawyers Guild Mass Incarceration Committee, thank you for your enduring support. We are vigorously preparing for Leonard's parole hearing on June 10th. Myself and the team are confident in the case we are presenting for Leonard's freedom. Yet, I don't need to tell you that the system has failed to puncture the air out of our tires at times, of course. But what I can also say is that they do not understand that it's not the energy we are rolling on. We are running on a movement of you. That means you. And we go in power. We do so in the strength of your courageousness and encouragement. We do so in the spirit of Leonard Peltier and his sacrifice. Leonard can never be caved, so they should just stop trying. We do so in the spirit of Crazy Horse, of Greasy Grass, of the Battle of Atla. We will not give up. So at this inflection point in history, when America's own tyranny is upon her, let it be a remarkable pivot from colonialism, a pivot marked by Leonard's release, a pivot scored by the vindication of the Uhuru 3, until it's won, Thank you again. Creator's blessings be with you. Uhuru. It is remarkable. It is remarkable that that man is still entombed in concrete and steel on nothing. They pulled evidence out of thin air. You know, I've been studying the Myrtle Porter affidavits this morning, and you know, first it was illegal, it was a treaty violation, but then the Supreme Court in its infinite wisdom decided to make kidnapping legal if it was in the interest of justice. Our Justice Department could care less about justice. They have not read their own mission statement. Leonard is a sacrifice that they chose to cover up their crimes. The Death Squad Ward was talking about. Commemoration Day is coming up, and what that means for Leonard, it's not only the deaths of those 3 people that day. They only acknowledge 2. They go on and on about Agents Williams and Kohler. Nobody says a word about Joe Stunts. But when they were running from their lives, Leonard took the time and stopped to pray for the 3 men that lost their lives that day. But it was the 60-something that came before that. What they were doing there was escorting people back and forth from funerals. I'm sorry, Bruce is trying to say Uhuru again. That's what Commemoration Day is about, is the extermination of the people. You know, American Indians make up a little over 1% of the population nowadays. Indigenous genocide is, hey, you guys, still very much alive and well. And it's time to expose the FBI for who they are. They are not the bright, shiny people you see on television. What strikes me every time I see your video is they covered up the cameras. They are so brazen. We're going to do a bunch of illegal stuff and we don't care who knows it. The church committee asked him, did you ever stop and give any thought to the illegality of your actions? All of them said no. We're pragmatic. We do what it takes to get things done. You know, it finally came out what they did to Martin Luther King. They decided he was the most dangerous man in America because he was a voice for the Black community. That is all. I love the low intensity warfare thing. I mean, we are all living in a pressure cooker and most people don't even realize it. Everyone out there is so despondent and apathetic. They shake their heads and they take pictures of their lunch and post it on Twitter. It's time for us all to wake up and realize what's being done to us. Civil rights belong to everyone and no one. And they have torn that man's rights to shreds. He has been literally tortured now for almost 50 years. Almost 50 years. He can't breathe. He's in pain. They gave him a CPAP machine. There's no electrical outlet to plug it into. Supposedly that's supposed to keep him breathing through the night, but he gets to stare at it and he gets to wonder if he's going to wake up breathing. So with that, I will just say drop the charges. Free Leonard Peltier. Free them all. Free them all. We need to redo things, people. We need to redo things. Thank you so much for having me. Uhuru.
Uhuru Dawn, thank you so much. And thank you for bringing the urgency that Leonard Peltier must get out now, must be freed now. Not one more year, not one more day.
Yes.
Uhuru, Chair Macy.
Yes. Oh no, I was just uniting and, you know, uniting with the call. Don, you said we need to change things and, you know, redo things. And we're in the process of doing that right now. And I just really wanted to join Penny, Chairwoman Penny, in, you know, saluting this courageous fight back for the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee. And again, yes, not one more day, not one more year. So Uhuru, thank you, Don. And we hope that you'll also stay back. People may have questions about how to continue to support. So
Uhuru. And this is not our government. This is not, we need to build our own government.
Yes, Uhuru. Unite with that. Uhuru, comrade. I'll turn it back to you, Chairwoman Penny, and I just really want to salute. If you take a look in the chat, if you're here on Zoom or on other platforms, you'll see there's just a lot of deep unity, with this struggle. We're going to continue to explain even more about the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee with our next guest. So, Uhuru.
Uhuru, yes, thank you. And yeah, I'm seeing there's a lot of chat going on. And
put the website in the chat. I'm sorry, I forgot to do that.
okay, yes, please do.
Purchase artwork, buy prints, donate. We're trying to get his medical team to the prison right now.
Uhuru, so yes, freeleonardpeltiernow.org. And yes, we'll keep that in the chat. People should go there and find out more about what is happening and also contribute to the funds for Leonard's case. And I wanted to also just say, I see Comrade Benjamin Prado is on, and many others from around. We can maybe say some of the people who are on. It's really powerful to have so many comrades with us today for this important event. And right now I am going to bring up attorney Michael Kuzma, a key part of Leonard Peltier's legal team, who will talk to us about the struggles to obtain what the US government calls the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and the struggles that have gone through and what they have been able to drag out through many years of fighting for freedom of information on Leonard Peltier's trial and case. Uhuru, welcome.
Yes, welcome. Thank you for having me. Are you,
Great. Thank you
okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. I'm Mike Kuzma. I'm a solo practitioner here in Buffalo. And for many years, I supported Leonard. I would write letters to my elected representatives in the House and Senate. I can remember going to DC and lobbying various members of the House and Senate to liberate Leonard Peltier from prison. In 2001, I was asked to help with some FOIA requests on behalf of Leonard Peltier. Jennifer Harberry at the time was leaving the Defense Committee, so I got involved. And just briefly, FOIA stands for the Freedom of Information Act. The act was signed into law on July 4th, 1966 by President Johnson. The law was strengthened under over a veto by President Ford in 1974. In 1986, the law was weakened. It was amended again in 2016. But in theory, what's supposed to happen is you submit a request to a federal agency, whether it's the FBI or the CIA, and they're supposed to either produce the sought after records or they can withhold them under the law. There are exemptions for national security and law enforcement. The exemptions are permissive, not mandatory, meaning that if information falls within one of the exemptions, it may be withheld. The agency has the discretion to release that information. And under FOIA, disclosure, not secrecy, is the dominant feature of the statute. So in 2001, we submitted various requests, and I have a few slides. I don't know, I don't know about you, it always looks it's easier for me. Well, I love this picture of Leonard. I actually met the photographer. He lives in Minnesota. Hopefully he's still alive. He was up in age when I did meet him, but I think this is a fantastic photo of Leonard. And he still has that fighting spirit. I saw him last April in Coleman. But first slide. As we all know, Leonard was tried in Fargo, North Dakota for the shooting agents Kohler and Williams. Now, at the time of Leonard's 1977 trial, government prosecutors merely turned over roughly 3,500 pages of documents to defense attorneys. So as an attorney, you're totally dependent upon the integrity of the prosecution, unless you have somebody on the inside telling you, hey, they're ixnay, there's more, you have to assume that they're on the up and up. Next slide. So what happens in October of 1979, we, in the District of Columbia, John Privatera, another New York attorney who's helped Leonard over the years, he and Mike Tiger actually made a request to the FBI and filed a lawsuit in DC. And the government now admits, oh, wait a minute, we have 18,000 pages of material, 12,000 pages were released in full or in part, 6,000 pages were withheld on national security grounds. Now, in those 12,000 pages that were released to John, we found that ballistics report that showed that the weapon that the government said was linked to Leonard couldn't have possibly shot the two agents. And if you've been around as long as I have, you may recall back in the 80s, one of the things that people were demanding was that the government should release the 6,000 pages that were being withheld on national security grounds. I can remember walking around the Capitol with other supporters urging senators and House members to release or liberate these records. Next slide, please. So in 2002, we submitted the new round of requests. We actually submitted requests. Back then, they had a different process for handling FOIA requests. You would submit them to the individual field offices. That's since changed. But we submitted FOIA requests to all 56 field offices, and we actually brought litigation in 2002. So what do we learn? There's 142,579 pages of material. FBI, this is just the FBI. There's other agencies, but the FBI has all this material relating to Leonard Peltier and RESMERS. For those who don't know the term, RESMERS stands for Reservation Murders, and that was the name the FBI gave to its probe into the deaths of Kohler and Williams. Now, the Minneapolis office was the office of origin for the RESMERS investigation. As you can see, they had 71,149 pages of material, 66,594 pages were released in full or in part, 10,555 pages were withheld in their entirety. Now, the requests were made in 01. We filed suit in 02. Now, the statute requires that this material be produced within 20 working days. So what actually happened in Leonard's case is you had the request made in 2001. By the time it worked its way through the courts, the U.S. District Court in Minnesota, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit, which is based in St. Louis, we did not get a final decision until 2009. So much for the 20 working days. Now, some of the records, and I might add those 10,555 pages are still being withheld. One of the cockamamie reasons they used for withholding this material was that it would hamper the nation's war on transnational terrorism. Some of the records we released that were released confirm what Penny and Ward spoke about earlier, is the FBI and the closely aligned Brotherhood of Federal Agencies waged war against the American Indian movement, its supporters and members. They waged disinformation campaigns. They used agents, informants, and the point was to destroy the American Indian movement and its members and supporters. The material, I know a lot of you wouldn't be surprised, but just horrendous at some of the disinformation that was directed toward the AIM leaders, as well as the organization as a whole, and some of the supporters, both prominent and otherwise. But what's outrageous is the FBI is allowed to do this. Other federal agencies are allowed to circumvent FOIA, even though they know that what the FBI has done to Leonard Peltier and members of the American Indian Movement. The 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver in 2003 stated, much of the government's behavior at the Pine Ridge Reservation and in its prosecution of Mr. Peltier is to be condemned. The government withheld evidence, it intimidated witnesses. These facts are not disputed. So the courts are well aware of what's happening, but I've yet to see a court take an agency to task for stonewalling a FOIA request, improperly invoking FOIA exemptions, and I don't see any real courageous judges out there, whether it's Leonard's case or I've been involved in other litigation regarding individuals involved in the environmental movement. They get the same treatment. It doesn't matter if you try. Even now, I'm trying to get some records regarding the Kent State massacre in 1970, and I've been stonewalled for years. I just filed suit late last year. And Carl Stern, who was a reporter for NBC way back when, filed a FOIA request. He wanted to know what the term COINTELPRO meant. And that was some of the first records that were released regarding this criminal FBI program. And the court, this was the DC Circuit in 1984, says the public has a strong interest in the airing of the FBI's unlawful and improper activities. Unfortunately, the courts don't heed this advice. I haven't seen too many court decisions that have forced the FBI or any other federal agency, for that matter, to release fully records regarding their illegal and illicit activity. So I think my time's about up, but I will make myself available for any questions. I'm very confident that Jennifer and the rest of the legal team will secure Leonard's liberation in June, but I will continue, as I have for the past several decades, to do everything I can to secure Leonard's liberation from prison. I visited him in Leavenworth and Lewisburg when he was here closer to Buffalo. Lewisburg's about 4 hours from here. I'd have to say Coleman is the worst facility that I've seen Leonard in. I never did get to see him in Marion, which was quite awful, but I'd like to thank you for inviting me, and I hope the event's a huge success and you reach your goal this afternoon. Thank you again.
Uhuru, Mike. Yeah, I just really wanted to appreciate that presentation. And again, thank you that you will be staying on for, questions and answers, because there may be some questions around this as we continue to even, approach the June hearing for, for Leonard Peltier. And I do want to just, really unite with this presentation, as it shows, how much, even just on a question of resources, how much it costs to be able to, put all of this, into this, fight back, fighting for lawsuits and the FOIA and all these other various, apparatus. So I really want to just salute you among with the other attorneys who are on this, fight back in Leonard's case, in the case of the Uhuru 3, and the cases of all who are, struggling. So thank you so much, Comrade Mike Kuzma, and we hope that you will, again, like you said, stay on with us.
I certainly will. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank Uhuru. Uhuru Penny. So I know we are approaching, continuing on in our program for today, and I want to just really looking forward to reading some of the great comments that are in the chat that are, helping us to continue to deepen this whole understanding. And I do want to remind people that we are, as You heard Comrade Mike Kuzma say that we are raising $2,000 towards the Hands Off Uhuru legal defense. And you can do that by going to handsoffuhuru.org/donate. We want to thank those who are already making those contributions. And we'd like to give an update that we are, I want to thank actually just a few more of our donors who have, put in since I last made the call. I want to thank Matthew. I want to thank Bakari, Gabrielle, Benjamin, as well as Ella, Sheila, as well as Wendy, Penny, and Brendan for your contributions by going to handsoffuhuru.org/donate. So Uhuru Payano, if you had anything to say before I introduce our next guest.
We will win.
Uhuru, there we go. We will win. Uhuru. So it is now my honor to introduce my leadership, the leader of the African nation, and who has spent the past nearly 60 years of his life in a relentless fight for the liberation of Africa and African people and all oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. He has taught the world the understanding that the anti-colonial movements are leading forces in the struggle to transform the world today. And his main, and again, as I mentioned, is the main target of the FBI attacks on the Uhuru 3 and on the Uhuru movement. This is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I want to appreciate you, Chairman, for being on with us today as we discuss counterinsurgency and its continued attacks on the oppressed and colonized people. So I know you are on the ground there in St. Louis, which is ground zero of these attacks on July 29th. And I want to salute you, comrades, and appreciate you, Chairman, for joining us. Uhuru.
Uhuru, I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you, Comrade Chairwoman Mwezi and Vice Chair Penny Hess. And also, I want to express my appreciation to everyone who has participated in this meeting up to now, and some of the extraordinary people who I know participating, though not speaking, in this process. Comrades Ward Churchill, with whom we've worked for many years as part of the American Indian movement. Comrade Don, who is sitting in for Jennifer Jones, who along with some other courageous forces have stepped in to really reignite, re-energize the struggle to free Leonard Peltier. And which is one of the biggest obscenities that I can imagine in terms of this government making against the people, the indigenous people whose land was stolen as a part of the project that created the system that we're living with now. Comrades like Mike Kuzma, who has spent so many years working to help free Comrade Leonard Peltier, and then there's Jesse and Neville, one of the Uhuru 3, and everybody else. So I want to just express my appreciation to everybody for participating here. And also, I think it's really important to recognize that some things right now in particular, because this is an urgent moment in history. Much of what we're talking about is defending the Uhuru 3. We're talking about freeing Leonard Peltier and all these other political prisoners who they have locked up. We're doing this in the context of the US government making war against the people of Palestine, which has escalated, as we know, since October. The US government being engaged in a vicious war in Ukraine, using against Russia, using Ukraine, as a means for doing that. The U.S. government continuing the war against people in Venezuela, Iran, the People's Democratic government of China. So it's just an ongoing crisis that we're looking at. In addition to these things, we're seeing the implosion of the system itself. We're looking at the crisis that revolves around even this question that we're engaged now: First Amendment, democracy. They have attacked us in the Uhuru movement, me, Comrades Penny and Jesse, because of our participation in elections. And elections demanding reparations for the first time in history, putting it actually on the platform. They have attacked us because we refuse to go along with this nonsense about somehow Russia being this boogeyman that's attacked the poor people in Ukraine. They have attacked us because we have reinitiated, and reinvigorated the charge against of genocide against the United States that was actually initiated by African people in this country in 1951, 52. Just in terms of the United Nations Convention in opposition to this question of and prevention of and punishment for the crime of genocide. These are some of the things they've charged us with. They've charged us with things related to talking, speaking, and they've gone so far as to say that even though we were talking, and even though otherwise that might violate like First Amendment rights, et cetera, the thing that makes it not a violation is the talking is now becomes action. So speech, they're not attacking us for speech, they're attacking us for actions. And the action, of course, was speaking. And so this is the bizarre situation that they're locked into. And it's a statement about the crisis that this whole system is going through. You have a situation where a former president of the United States who achieved prominence as a presidential candidate and president, achieved prominence much earlier with some other dirty stuff. But in this instance, he achieved prominence and as part of a denunciation of U.S. system, denunciation of the fairness of the election, denunciation of the neutrality of news media, the denunciation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that is involved in the murder in Ukraine and Russia. He achieved a prominence in a denunciation of the United Nations that's normalized and formally validated the kind of process that's going on here. And so you got this person who came into prominence politically as a candidate with that, keeping that in mind, which is a statement of crisis. In fact, he said, I know that it's rigged, the elections are rigged. I know it's rigged because I helped to rig them, et cetera, with money. So this is part of what it is that we're looking at. And then we're also looking at the situation where the United States has to contend with forces that it had assumed to be dormant, to be no longer political factors in the world. That includes China and Russia, who suddenly it has to contend with in terms of what the existing order, world order is going to look like. The United States has to contend with the fact that there's nervousness throughout this country on whether or not there's actually going to be an election in 2024. I mean, these are questions that's roiling the waters, and situations where things like free speech that people used to claim to believe in now is clearly under assault. Clearly, Zuckerberg and so-called making it impossible for people to break out of the information lock that's been placed on us. These are the kinds of things that we're looking at, and it's a critical moment in history. And we can look at other forces. I mean, you got the existing president whose son himself is facing charges, criminal charges, who himself is suspected of being in partners with his son in carrying out some of the crimes that his son has been indicted for. This is a real crisis that we're looking at. And then this war that's being made against the people of Palestine, that the Palestinian people have excited and raised the morale of peoples all around the world, helping to say that this monster can be defeated. They are repeating something that we saw with the Vietnamese, the heroic Vietnamese who carried the colonized peoples on their backs for long periods of time, fighting against U.S. imperialism. And so you see a repetition of this. You see, like in the 1960s, when the students, campuses throughout this country were framed with mass
opposition to U.S. policies in Vietnam and other places, now you see that being repeated right now in this moment in history. It's a really critical moment. We talk about how what the U.S. is trying to do is cut off the ability of the Black Revolution to rear its head again. And when I say rear its head, I'm not just talking about having protests, participation. I'm not just talking about people who get along together and put out clever discussions about how bad U.S. is, but actually who are working to overturn this colonial relationship that African people have with this system. That's what we are experiencing today. And so I just think it's really important that we try to sum up this thing and understand what we're looking at. When we talk about COINTELPRO, we're talking about the attack by COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, on the African Revolution, on the Indigenous Revolution, including Mexicans, of course, and on the struggles of peoples around the world. What is it that we are looking at? And I think it's really important to recognize that. I just want to say a couple of things because, as I mentioned, some of what we're seeing now, we've seen in the past. This is not the first time we've seen the campuses aflame. This is not the first time we've seen the United States government attacking the Black Revolution. This is not the first time, as with Leonard Peltier, we've seen this assault on the indigenous people. This stuff has happened and has risen with a serious situation in the past. So I think it's important for us to look at this because I am not involved in this movement to get me out of prison or to keep me out of prison. And the Uhuru movement is not involved in this movement to keep me out of prison. In fact, it's prisons themselves. It's the fact that African people are a nation behind bars as a group. That's colonialism. That's the basis for my being put in motion here. And that's true of the indigenous people. And that's true of the people who are trying to defend Leonard Peltier now. And what the United States government, if it's successful, would do is try to obscure the fact that they are the basis for the crime. Not just the crime against Leonard Peltier, but of the indigenous people themselves, that this is a settler state that's on indigenous land. And that what they have succeeded in doing, at least temporarily, or at least to some extent, quieting or subduing the struggle of the indigenous people so that it has not been able to maintain the extent that it has from the very beginning. But the indigenous people have never surrendered. They've always fought. This is natural for people who are colonized. And if you have settler colonialism can only succeed with the extermination of those who are being colonized. And that's true whether you call it Palestine or call it Israel, or it's true whether you call it North America. So the truth is the indigenous people have to fight. Leonard Peltier has to fight. And because he has to fight, then the U.S. has to find a way to legalize oppressing him and killing him, since they no longer can admit that we're Indian killers. They can no longer say, as they have in the past, that that's what they're about. And the same thing is true with African people in this country. So I want to make a couple of points. One, that part of what it is really important for us to recognize is colonialism. And not colonialism simply as a policy, because we can see colonialism as a policy as it emerged, for example, in Portugal more than 600 years ago, with Portugal, this little tiny, almost insignificant entity that strikes out, looking for the gold that Mansa Musa demonstrated to a starving Europe in the 1300s, trying to find that to rescue themselves and begin this process of ultimately kidnapping African people and forcibly transferring us around the world, so that that African people exist all over this hemisphere, and the contours of this hemisphere has changed as a part of the process of that assault. So we're not just talking about many different colonialism, we're talking about one colonialism. We're talking about a mode of production. We're talking about an attack on Africa that resulted for the first time in human history in the existence of one world economy. There was no world economy before then. It was this attack on Africa and the subsequent enslavement and dispersal of African people around the world that created the different Venezuelas and created all of these other entities that's out there around the world. But they also transferred the African Revolution to these places, and even to St. Louis, Missouri. So this is the actual foundation of the capitalist system. It's impossible to imagine capitalism existing without the existence of this colony, this settler colony of America. It's impossible. You can't even, it's impossible for the human imagination to suggest the possibility of there being a capitalism if it weren't on this stolen land. There being a capitalism were not for the attack on Africa that's responsible for my being in St. Louis. For there to be a capitalism without stealing half of Mexico as was done, without what happened in Haiti and all these other places, that's the foundation of everything. This is the basis of the colonial system. And the colonizer makes the laws. And when the colonizer makes the law, the colonizer can and does say, this is what is legal. So it makes the laws that legalize colonialism. Slavery in this country was legal. It was not an illegal act. It was, they legalized it. They legalized themselves, etc. But slavery is illegitimate despite the fact that it was legal. Colonialism can make laws, but the colonizing colonialism itself is illegitimate. I think it's really important for us to understand that. That's the only thing that will help us really be able to fight this thing with the intensity that we have to fight it, and with the recognition that we ain't gonna never stop fighting it. We're gonna fight it forever because it's not just against the law, it's against colonialism and the colonizers who make the law. And so that's really important, I think, for us to understand. One, two, in order for this thing that we call law to even have any kind of significance, there has to be instruments of coercion. This is what you call the state. You hear people talking about the state all the time. I'm not talking about the state like Missouri. I'm talking about the state. I'm talking about this entity that came into existence, particularly in Europe, that we are familiar with at the time where the society got split. The society split between haves and have-nots, when the king runs everything and the serfs and all of these people control everything, and people, not the serfs, but the lords and etc. And the people are living on the land dominated by the nobility, by the monarchy and what have you. And the people had no rights at all. This was feudalism in Europe. And this was what they characterized as a mode of production. It wasn't in Europe, it was in these little states, these little entities that existed throughout this territory that we now know as Europe. And so, but the state was there. Anytime you have the society that's splits like that, and part of the society live off what it steals and takes from another part of the society, you have to have some mechanism, some entity that can moderate this relationship, that can keep the thing from exploding, that can keep the oppressed from going and cutting the throats of the oppressors and taking back everything that's been stolen. That is the state, and the bureaucracy that revolves around that. That's the state. And so the state existed in these territories we call Europe. But what happened was, once Portugal set off, once the other entities that now is recognized as Europe went and began to steal wealth and resources, create this whole world economy at our expense, at the expense of the vast majority of the people on the planet Earth. That's who we're still struggling and trying to get out from this thing that Europe imposed on us all this time, but it created instruments of suppression and coercion to make that work. And they created laws. And the thing that makes the laws work is not because we believe in it, because they got guns, because they got armies, because they got prisons. That's the state apparatus that we're looking at. When we see that, it's really important for us to understand that. So, I'm going to trial on September 3rd. Penny, Jesse will go to trial on September 3rd. Leonard Peltier has been tried and put in prison. For what? For protecting the indigenous people, trying to protect the indigenous people on their own land from interlopers. From interlopers who cannot claim a legitimate relationship to this land except by guns. They took it, they killed, they murdered people, they assassinated people all up and down the line. And they killed all of us. And it's really important to recognize this, because the Palestinians should never have to fight alone again. And the Africans should never have to fight alone again, and people in Cuba and all around the world, because we all exist as a part of a colonial mode of production. Here we have a real possibility of the implementation of Che's slogan, 2, 3, many Vietnams. All of these struggles against colonialism, and we recognize it's a struggle against a single system. That's the thing that gives urgency and agency. to all of us. And we're looking at a system that is sorely wounded. It's wounded because the colonized have begun to fight back. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in what we call Israel. It's happening, in Africa. It's happening in St. Louis, Missouri. It's happening in all these places. The system is in severe trouble. And it's to a point where this thing that's called an election in this country, which traditionally is supposed to be a nonviolent contest between sectors of the bourgeoisie for control of the state. We've seen in the past that that's broken out, and it has broken into violence. We've seen the assassination of presidents here by instruments of state power. The John F. Kennedy died. His brother was killed. George Wallace, when he was running for office, an assassination attempt occurred there. When the system is experiencing these crises like it is, you even see splits within the ruling classes themselves, trying to make sure that they get what it is that they want, and that sector is the sector that prevails. And they moved in desperations to crush their opponents using armed struggle to do that. And so we saw them overthrow Nixon. We saw them force Spyro Agnew, Nixon's vice president, out of office, etc. So we've seen this stuff before. This is not new. But what is new now is the African People's Socialist Party is new. What is new now is a consciousness of colonialism as a mode of production. So we're not fighting this thing by ourselves alone. What is new now, this consciousness allows us to be able to fight, particularly against the opportunism in this country, because the white movement, the so-called white left, has been the fundamental contradiction of all the struggles of the peoples around the world. Everybody's had to fight them, whether it was African people who were in Algeria trying to fight against French colonialism, and the French Communist Party and French left supported the French in opposition to us, and just as they did for a moment in Vietnam, just as in the 1960s, how the white left usually refused. I mean, Fred Hampton, Black Panther Party had to fight the white left all down the line. They wouldn't get on board, and just like it's happened right here in this country, when we've tried to win and have been fighting for so many years to win the white left, to a white population to unite with the struggle of African people against colonialism. And the fact of the matter is they're protecting their own asses. They have united with the definition of this reality. They're fighting to protect the system itself when they fight against the capacity of Africans and Mexicans and indigenous people to fight for our own liberation. But that's going to happen. This movement, this meeting is one that's conducted as a part of an anti-colonial free speech movement. It's not just free speech. It's an anti-colonial free speech. Leonard Peltier has to have the right to be able to pursue his interests in the indigenous people, the Mexican people, the African people, and every legitimate force that wants to consider itself anti-imperialist and part of the left has a responsibility to unite with that struggle, especially if you're white and you live in this country or you live in the world. That's a responsibility, because I have a real problem even understanding how you can find Palestine walking through the desolate communities that Black people and Mexican people in cages and things like that in this country, and the indigenous people locked up in these concentration camps they call it Indian reservations. If I were Palestinians, I'd be suspicious as hell of how the hell you could get to Palestine. How you had to get a passport to get to Palestine. All you got to do is get some gas or even hitchhike to the different places inside this country to support the Mexicans, support the indigenous people, and support the African Revolution. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you so much, and say that when we understand that colonialism is the question, we use the law, because the law is something that they created. And we help white people understand that these laws were made for you. And if they're coming at me using an attack on democratic rights, an attack on the Constitution, an attack on the First Amendment, they ain't using that because we never had it. We never had those rights. They're using this, they shatter the ability for you to have these kinds of rights. This is what you call fascism, when what is happening to Black people and indigenous people, etc., begins to creep into your reality. This is what we want to help the white people understand, so they can get on the right side of history and be able to struggle to overturn the social system that keeps us in prison and threatens to lock everybody up who they do not annihilate through some process of nuclear conflagration or the destruction of the environment. Uhuru.
Wow. Uhuru, Chairman. Wow, that just really want to appreciate that summation of even what we're looking at just in the context, not of just this webinar, but of, overall, as you said, building this anti-colonial free speech movement and really breaking down what is, colonialism, the colonial state, and how, again, colonialism, like you said, Chairman, makes these laws, and this is what impacts this entire political and economic configuration that impacts all of humanity, whether you are, like you said, the haves or the have-nots, the colonizer population or the colonized. We are watching and seeing right now an implosion of this colonial capitalist system, with these, bogus charges on attacks of free speech, the fight for democracy, calling out the United States, with genocide and the unjust war on the people. And this is such an exciting period, and I want to really salute your presentation, Chairman Uhuru. Uhuru. So, comrades, and just one of the ways that the chairman even wrapped up and, summed up his presentation around the, struggle happening right here on these here, so-called United States, which is the stolen land of the indigenous people. And it would be, and it is my honor to bring up our next presentation from the Mexican liberation struggle, Unión del Barrio. I want to bring up Comrade Francisco Chavo Romero, who is here with us today, Uhuru compañero, who is our, and Unión del Barrio is our dear, fraternal organization of the African People's Socialist Party, who have worked closely for more than 30 years. And I really want to salute you, comrade, and appreciate you for being on. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru,
comrades.
Uhuru.
Compañeros, compañeras, such an honor to be here on this panel this morning and afternoon for some of you. We, as Unión del Barrio, have worked alongside our comrades of the APSP, the Uhuru movement, for over 3 decades. Our fraternal unity of struggle, of an anti-colonial struggle as indigenous people, we as Unión del Barrio Mexicanos, indigenous people, we understand clearly that we are bonded by blood and sweat and tears to fight for our liberation. And the best way to show our solidarity is to always organize alongside and with you. I'm gonna go ahead and share a couple of slides. I'm gonna truncate a little bit my discussion this morning on behalf of our organization, so that we could have some time for questions and answers, right? So let me go ahead and I think you're probably seeing the layout right now of the presentation. I'm gonna go back a couple of slides. Compañero Omali Yeshitela was very clear in highlighting the importance of what it meant for the colonial process to take not only land, but labor and resources, humans into captivity, and humans into jails, and humans into what people would call reservations nowadays, right? We wanted to just highlight that we as Mexicanos, we are part of a nation of peoples that have been here for centuries. And when the settler colonial state comes in to power, it must do so through programs such as COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO really, it's a hint of the actual military superiority and power that the white supremacist, project has upon our people. And so just even showcasing here how many of indigenous peoples we're talking about here on these territories, on this continent, right? On the islands, right? It's pretty overwhelming, the fact that white supremacist power has taken control of our land, resources, and our labor. So what we're fighting for is to take back those land, resources, people power, and labor, because the resources, that's really what this was all about. the colonial process of pushing indigenous people into contained spaces known as reservations, known as prisons, known as barrios, known as hoods or ghettos. They try to corral us into these pockets, so we are detached from our lands. And right now, Comrade Omali Yeshitela was really clearly explaining how even in Palestine, the reduction of our peoples into spaces and being contained is very similar. Actually, it's the same exact process of settler colonial powers reducing our people into these spaces. So what we're fighting for is our freedom to reconnect with our lands, reconnect with our territory, and reconnect with our resources. Because in the end, that's really what this is about. The San Francisco 49ers, people talk about the 49ers. Why is it that it's not a coincidence that 1 year after the U.S. waged war against our people, Mexicanos, 1 year later, the gold rush happens? They already knew. They already had scouts. Some people call them Crockett or what have you. They had scouts that were going out into our territories, and they're saying, look, there's gold, there's silver, there's copper, there's beautiful lands, there's rivers, there's water. Let's take it. That's really what this is about. Our resources, and of course, again, when I say we were forced and pushed into these corners of whether they're reservations or prisons, and through programs, we would say as Unión del Barrio that COINTELPRO, the mechanism of COINTELPRO really had it start from the beginning around how do we contain these indigenous people from asserting their right to self-determination. And to do that, you have to take land, you have to take control. And so luckily, through organization, we always say that we are here. We are self-determined. We are organizing. Scientifically, mathematically, we understand clearly that nothing can hold our people back as indigenous people, as Black liberation African peoples, to reach our freedom. Nothing can stop us from getting there. The vehicle is organization, as Chairman Omali was saying, as Comrade Penny Hess was saying. The vehicle is organization. What does organization mean? Organization means that you can't do it by yourself. You have to unite with other people that are on common grounds and with the same kind of theory and trajectory as you are. I'm gonna end this short intervention by saying that we actually, as Mexicanos, we have a specialized military force that was created to control us as indigenous people on this continent. And you can see here that they're still around. They are very present. They are putting up walls, militarizing the land and the border. I mean, this is a type of situation that we are, as Mexicanos, indigenous people, fighting up against. And this is why the anti-colonial free speech movement that my comrades here have been speaking about today is so critical, because it is that voice, it is the literature, it is the writings that we are producing, that history will show into the future that we were here during this period, this most turbulent, difficult period that we're in right now. And the comrades that are being attacked right now, the Uhuru movement, is part of the attempt to silence our people from voicing our fight for our freedom and our liberation. So comrades, I will end there by just saying that we unite with the Uhuru movement, we unite with the African People's Socialist Party. On behalf of Unión del Barrio, thank you so much for giving us a small space here in this very important topic.
Thank you so much, Compa Chavo with Unión del Barrio. What a really profound presentation. And I just really want to appreciate the slides and you're taking your time just going through, again, the shared history, the shared anti-colonial struggle, and really want to salute Unión del Barrio, who many of the members, in this organization are educators. And so this is what anti-colonial education looks like in preserving our, history and, charting out what the future will look like. Because as you said, we were there and we are still here. And these attacks to silence our peoples this time around will not go undefeated. So I just really want to salute that presentation, Compa, and I hope you two will also stay on as well. So thank you, comrades. Uhuru. And I want to really just appreciate those who have been going to handsoffuhuru.org/donate. This is the call to help us raise $2,000 on today for the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund. And for those of you who are just joining us, this is a webinar brought to you by the Hands Off Uhuru Fightback Coalition titled COINTELPRO Exposed, Defeating the FBI's War on African and Indigenous Liberation. And we've had some really profound presentations from our presenters and our guests on today. And I want to say thank you, comrades, for staying with us. We are going to move right into our appeal and get an update about how close we are to reaching our goal on today and surpassing our goal on today. So I want to bring up one of the Uhuru three. This is chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And again, another front of this fight back for the Black liberation struggle, part of leading the anti-colonial struggle, in terms of Black power in whiteface. I want to salute Comrade Chair Jesse Neville, who's going to give us an update on our appeal. So I see you're in place now, Comrade. And Uhuru.
Hands off Uhuru. Hands off Africa. Uhuru. Colonialism must go. Uhuru, thank you so much, Chair Mwezi. And I just want to say that this has been an incredibly powerful program today. I want to salute all of the presenters, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, you, Chair Mwezi, Comrade Francisco from Unión del Barrio, Chairwoman Penny Hess, Professor Ward Churchill, Attorney Mike Kuzma, Comrade Dawn, and all of you who have already contributed to our goal to raise $2,000 today. And we have to go ahead and close out this goal by the time I am done talking to you over the next 8 or so minutes. So while I'm talking, please go ahead to handsoffuhuru.org/donate and contribute whatever you can. We are already almost halfway there. We have raised $995 already in this event tonight. Uhuru. That means we only have $1,005 to raise when you go to handsoffuhuru.org/donate to make your contribution. And I want to thank Dawn, Susan, Maureen, Allison, Bree, Kitty, Ruby, Scott, MQ, Chessie, Matthew, Bakari, Gabriel, Benjamin, Ella, Sheila, Wendy, Penny, Brendan, Chair Mwezi, MQ, once again, Lisa, Michael, Malika, MQ, and just say it with me this time, MQ. Yeah, that was the 4th MQ. Probably not the last. Michael, another Michael, Chair Mwezi, and everybody else that's been watching, go ahead to handsoffuhuru.org/donate and start your contributions. And I think I have the slide up. Okay, so first of all, I want to say that the subheading of today's event is what this appeal is about: defeating the counterinsurgency against the African and Indigenous people struggle for liberation. That's what the case of the Uhuru 3 is about: pushing back, defeating the U.S. counterinsurgency, keeping the democratic space open for African people to advocate and fight for their liberation. This is a people's movement. Thousands of people have donated to this campaign since it was launched on the doorsteps of Chairman Omali Yeshitela's home that very day on July 29th of 2022. And you have brought us so far, so close to victory. So now we've got to go ahead and bring it home. So I have a very exciting announcement to make, comrades, which is that Part 1, Phase 1 of our fundraising campaign, if you go to the next slide, is officially completed.
Oh.
This is a huge milestone. I just want to say this is a major, major, historic, revolutionary milestone. As I mentioned, the fundraising campaign was launched the same day the counteroffensive was launched. And that day was July 29th of 2022, when the chairman stood up in front of his house. The US government had been there just hours earlier with their flashbang grenades, with their assault rifles, thinking that they would be able to silence Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party. And of course, the chairman stood up and showed them that nothing will silence the voice of the African revolution, and that no amount of flashbang grenades will ever be able to change that. So despite all of the attacks that have come down, despite banks getting shut down, despite GoFundMe holding $10,000 hostage, despite our fiscal sponsor being abruptly shut down, despite all of these attacks, you, the people who make up this campaign, kept giving, kept contributing, and made it possible for us to raise $277,500 in phase one. So on the next slide, I want to show you just a snapshot of what your support made possible. So this is a pie chart here that's split up between legal fees, travel, operations, communications, promotions, printing, shipping, all the things that go into this, making this campaign. But as you can see, the biggest piece of this pie was retaining the incredible legal team for the Uhuru 3. And thanks to all of the contributions that you made in phase one, we were able to hire the powerful legal team. We want to salute, first of all, the contribution of Leonard Goodman himself, who is representing pro bono in the case of the Uhuru 3. Leonard Goodman. And also shout out Angela Rainey, Mutaki Akbar, Addie Griffin, and Tom Inskeep, all of the members of the powerful legal team. And you know, everything that you contributed goes towards winning this campaign, that which goes to the lawyers and that which goes to every other aspect of this campaign, because this is a political trial. As the chairman has said, our jury is the people. So now we have no time to waste in getting to the finish line of phase two. Phase two is already in action now. From now until the trial on September 3rd in 2024, our commitment is to raise $100,000. And this is based on anticipated costs for legal fees, hiring expert witnesses, paying for court transcripts, research, and more. This is not going to be a 3-day trial. They're talking about at least a month that they want to tie up people in this this trial, this political assault that they are carrying out with this trial. And our ability to fight back in the courts and in the streets cannot be limited by lack of resources. We have to fund this fight back. And in addition to that, there's going to be the need to organize the ability to get people to and from the courthouse every day, to get banners, to get media, and so much more. So go to handsoffahuru.org/donate, and 100 people, 100 comrades contributing $1,000 each. That would take us to the finish line for phase two. So I want to just ask people in the room and online, put in the chat if you want to be one of the 100 comrades to pledge $1,000 or more towards phase two of the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. And I also want to shout out we have a hand in the back, Comrade Ruby, Uhuru. Wow, Uhuru, Ruby. So we're going to count that towards today's goal, which means we just surpassed our goal for today of $2,000. I also want to salute and thank incredible Marsha Coleman Adebayo, who is tuned in, who put in $40. Uhuru. And I also want to thank Comrade Amanda, who is here, who had previously pledged $1,000. Uhuru to Comrade Amanda. And Sharon, who was one of the first people in phase two to pledge $1,000 and has been making those payments on a weekly basis. Uhuru to Sharon. And on the next slide, I want to give we have another hand in the back. Yes.
I want to contribute 1,000.
Wow. Uhuru, Kitty. We have a pledge of 1,000 from Kitty. Uhuru. So be like Ruby, be like Kitty, be like Amanda, be like Sharon, and make your pledge of $1,000 or more. We just need 100 people to do that to meet our goal for phase 1. And I wanted to give a special heartfelt revolutionary salute to two very important donors that helped us to start off phase 2 strong. One of them is Alvin in San Francisco, California, who contributed early on in phase 2, $2,500. Uhuru, Alvin. The other person I want to shout out and salute and thank is Peg in St. Petersburg, Florida, who contributed a lot in phase 1, but also started off phase 2 strong with $1,000 that she contributed plus $250 monthly. So wow. Uhuru, Peg. We have another contribution from Comrade Michael for a pledge. We have a pledge from Michael for $1,000. Uhuru, Michael! Uhuru! Wow, this is powerful, comrades. This is very inspiring. Yes. Just want to salute everybody that is contributing, that is pledging. And we have so far raised towards our fundraising campaign today $4,050. Uhuru. Uhuru. Wow. Okay, so I'm coming to the end here. I just want to say that part of the attack that was made on our ability to raise these resources was when the previous fiscal sponsor shut down, we lost all of our monthly sustainers. So that was a significant amount of resources that was automatically coming into the campaign on a monthly basis that was just terminated overnight when that happened. So one of the ways that you can fight back against that is by reinstating your monthly sustainer if you haven't done so already, or becoming a monthly sustainer and increasing whatever amount you were doing before. So we want to thank Chair Mwezi, Peg, Raya, President Matsamela, Rinaldo, Len, Director Akile, MQ, Patrick, Dr. Aisha, Wendy, Gail, and Leah, and 2 anonymous sustainers. And I know today we also have Brendan and at least one, and Wendy, another Wendy, Comrade Wendy, who became a monthly sustainer. So you can go to handsoffuhuru.org/donate, click monthly. And I also want to mention that if you go to the last slide here, on our new contribution donation platform, you can donate by card, you can donate directly from your bank account, you can pay by Venmo, you can pay by PayPal, you can pay by Bitcoin, you can pay in any way possible. You can also mail a check to Uhuru Solidarity Center. Make the check out to Hands Off Uhuru. Simple as that, Hands Off Uhuru. And you can send it to the Uhuru Solidarity Center, 2654 Gravois Ave in St. Louis, Missouri, 63118. So just want to close by thanking everybody who contributed. And I just want to make sure there's not anyone I'm missing. So thank you to everybody who donated, made this such a successful fundraiser today. Every dollar you donate makes a mark on history. This trial will be remembered for generations to come. They think they're putting the Uhuru 3 on trial, but it is the Uhuru movement and the anti-colonial struggle that is putting the state on trial. We will win. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Hands off Uhuru.
Hands off Uhuru.
Uhuru, wow. Thank you so much for leading that very exciting appeal, Chair Jesse, and to everybody who made a contribution on today to help us double our goal and surpass even that, raising a total of, I think I see some more coming in, but my last count was, okay, my last count was $4,050 towards the phase 2 of our goal of raising 100,000 towards
Pledge 1,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Come up and say it.
Yeah.
Can you announce that again? Can you
Yes, I just wanted to salute Onyondo Barrio, who pledged $1,000. Uhuru, thank you so much.
Wow, very powerful, and just really want to salute that this amazing fight back, comrades. We are winning, and we will win. And right now, we are moving into the portion of this program to kind of look at some of the questions and answers or questions that have been coming in. And I want to thank you. I see Comrade Penny is up and the chairman. And Thank you. I see Chavo and others who are still with us in terms of our amazing panelists for today. We invite you all to participate in this section. So Penny, I might start with you on the ground if you wanted to jump off. There are some comments too that I can read that have also come in throughout the program.
Uhuru. Well, first of all, wow, what an amazing program.
Yeah.
Really want to also salute Unyanda Barrio for that amazing presentation, as well as the powerful pledge. And, just really, really inspiring all of the speakers today. It's an honor to be here. Chairman, that was an amazing presentation that you made, by the way. That was just, wow. You laid it out in such a dynamic way of, just tying this question together of the colonial mode of production that you're talking about. I know we have, as we've said, there's people from all over the world on this call. I know that there are some comments here. I don't know if are we going to start? Should I just start reading some of what's here?
Yeah, we can read some of the comments, and yes, that would be a great place to start.
And so, okay, well, let me just say that here's one that's saying, has there been any consideration by the Revolutionary Anti-Colonial Alliance of filing a human rights application of the Convention and Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the UN International Court of Justice against the purveyors in the US?
Uhuru, that's an important question. Obviously, just like the Palestinian people, they recognize they're going to have to win that. But it's really important, the solidarity that's been demonstrated from peoples around the world, and what we've seen that's come from South Africa, which is itself a neo-colonial settler state, but was able to introduce at the United Nations the whole question of genocide. And that's something that we've been working on for many years. And one of the things that we've been charged with is that being employees of the Russians, because we were collecting signatures and winning people to support the struggle that we wanted to make to get to the United Nations around this question. And after they attacked us, they stole something like 130,000 signatures on petitions that we had created on, what is it called? Change.org. So yeah, we've thought about that. And that's something that the party, African People's Socialist Party, is I believe the advanced sector of the African liberation movement. But there are forces that we work with do work primarily in the international arena, the United Nations. We do some work through NPDUM, the United Nations, but there are other people we're really close to. And we actually talking about forging that process. But the government is really concerned, just like the government did not expect, the state of Israel did not expect that people were going to come from the different places, from South Africa, et cetera, and free the Palestinian people. But what it does is it exposes the hypocrisy of these entities that's going to take civilization. That has been a part of the line, that they were taking civilization to kind of a barbaric and feudalistic Arab people when they took Palestine. And in this instance, they bring in civilization and civilizing African people in this country who don't have any agency. And they put themselves forward as, remember Israel was supposed to be this, what, the shining hill, the shining what? City on the hill, and the United States has put itself forward in the same fashion, so that to the extent that masses of people around the world can unite with this campaign to take the United States before the United Nations, before the UN around this question, it's a really important political gesture. And I think it's something that we have talked about, and now we're talking about reinitiating that or deepening that process to make that happen.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman, for that. There's another question, but I just also wanted to say that all of our guests today can, you can direct questions towards everyone who has spoken today, right. Just to make that clear to everybody here. This is from an anonymous attendee, but they are saying, what is the other side of colonialism once defeated? Interesting question.
Once colonialism is defeated, there is no other side. I mean, I'm not trying to be facetious or anything like that. I mean, I can't, make a prediction of the future, except people will be free. And that's the vast majority of the people on the planet Earth. That means that maybe 20% of the people on the earth are going to have to get jobs, finally, fend for themselves, learn how to play basketball and sing and dance and do all those other kinds of things. They relegated the rest of us too. I mean, and I'm not trying to be facetious, because sometimes the question can be a stumbling block. That's the question. I remember Malcolm X saying something like, well, what are you going to replace, this thing they have? And he said, that's like asking somebody, if somebody who's being choked to death, what are they going to replace the arm with? They cut off the arm, what are they going to replace it with? Well, people be free. And the thing is that people be able to say clearly what it is. But we predict that we unleash the genius of the masses of the people that's placed under severe restraint. Coming at from Union made the point about the land, and which is a critical issue. Because when you talk about the struggle of colonized people, what we're engaged in is a struggle to liberate the productive forces. We don't have access to our own productive forces. Those productive forces are controlled by the colonizers. What we produce, they take it. They take the land, which is part of the productive forces. They got the people, which is part of the productive forces. Most significant aspect of the productive forces, the ability of the people to feed, clothe, and house themselves without restraints, and to direct our energies. We get rid of these competitive kinds of economic relationships where countries are competing with each other and the basis of war over resources and things like that. We create a whole new world. That's what we're about. And so I just think that's part of the answer. And so obviously, I'm not, a fortune teller or anything like that, but I do believe that the genius of the people will solve all these problems. And we'll solve all these problems. And the process of liberation is part of the process of creating the new world. Like right now, we've created something like 50 some odd economic institutions, African People's Socialist Party or the Uhuru movement alone. The thing is that we are engaged in the process of negating colonialism all the time and creating the future. That's what we mean when it says uneasy equilibrium. It's a contest between the past and the future is winning. And they can't stop the future with flashbang grenades and things like that. We still have these projects going on, not here, only here, but we're in Africa, and I'm hoping people can. I really want you to get access to the Africa work because we've just opened offices in South Africa, and I think it's in Liberia. I think one of the other places where we've just opened offices. They're small offices and they need resources as well. So we're in the process of creating that future right now. And part of the process of creating that future, I really mean this, is winning this case. And even though we will say, and we will fight around the First Amendment, because you wrote the First Amendment, and now you want to snatch it back at the time where we are utilizing it for liberation. We're going to use the First Amendment. We're going to push the First Amendment. We're going to make them choke on the First Amendment because that's supposed to be something that's available to every damn body. So we do that on the one hand, but on the other hand, we will not allow anybody to take us off the path in recognition that we are talking about a fight against colonialism. We have to continue to deepen that, to make that something that everybody recognizes, especially the colonized people ourselves. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman. And I see Michael Penn actually has their hand up. I see a question here. If you want to come on and say your question, I think you can do that. I don't know. I don't know. I guess our Zoom moderators would have to say what that would take. But I do see I will read your question, Michael, and it says, how do we convince people that qualified immunity needs to go and police departments are beyond repair? Chairman, do you want to say something to that?
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the whole struggle. I mean, I talked about the state a moment ago. The police is an instrument of state power, of a colonial state power, the Army, the CIA, the FBI. All of these are instruments of colonial state power to protect the status quo. And you will find the sharpest expression of this apparatus places where what is characterized as class struggle is sharpest. And if we recognize that we're living in a global community now that came about with the emergence of the colonial mode of production, the so-called capitalist state was born as an international global entity. And so I think that we are pushing back and to a fight against the whole colonial enterprise, the whole colonial project, and this thing about the state, the state legalizes itself. Mm-hmm. It legalizes itself, and even there's supposed to be. Remember when they used to say a long time ago? Maybe people in here are too young to remember that period when they used to say that that the police and the government work for the people. Yeah. There used to be the assumption that the police, at least in theory, were servants of the people. So they're changing all of that, you know, and so now the people have to be servants, and they even trying to treat the police as a protected class. That's increasingly what is happening now. So we have to take the covers off. But it's not just us. And I really want us to remember when we engage in this struggle that something is happening in the world and in this country, because there's tremendous amount of opposition against the FBI crossing all political, spectrum, everybody, right wingers, left wingers, everybody against the state, against the FBI. They're calling it out by name, and against the police. Yeah. So this is the reality that we're looking at right now. But we also have to remember, as colonized people, just because white folk get upset about this stuff doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be sympathetic to us. So we have to have agency. We have to have agency. We want to talk to everybody who will listen to us. And we want to help to explain to white people that you're going to be stupid, silly. The colonizers need to understand how this thing is being used against them as well. But our objective is to achieve enough agency to win our freedom. Yeah. And winning our freedom in part means taking advantage of this contradiction that exists among the colonizers and see what we can win over to the side of anti-colonialism as opposed to anti-racism. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Yeah. Wow. That's powerful, Chairman. There's one last question here before, and we can have people, if anybody wants to come up here in the audience here.
I just want to say Comrade Ward Churchill has written a lot on this, yes. And I know his partner, Natsu, has written, yes. Tomes on this question of colonial law, the law of the colonizer, et cetera. So people should be aware of that. Uhuru.
Yes, yes. And yes, Professor Churchill, any words from you? If you want to comment on any of this.
And also while we're, just in case if Professor
I don't
Churchill,
know if you can unmute.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me, comrades. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I did want to also just appreciate that question too, as we wait for others to come on and contribute if they can. But one thing that I appreciate about that question around, just a police department, which as we understand, the chairman has broken it up as a function of the state, is us creating our own forms of state power that negate the colonial state. And the comrades from Union, understand this well in terms of, defending, the Mexican and indigenous people from ICE and some of their, committees like the Comités de Resistencia, which help to just educate the people and organize them around how to defend ourselves from these police states and build our own forms of state power, like Black community control police and so on. So this is how we do it. And the only reason why it's able to impact us, I remember the chairman talking about, is that we don't have state power. It's why we can have a whole tribunal, calling out, genocide, but it's, but this is how, colonial law functions. And I just wanted to appreciate this question, this overview, and I see Professor Ward has joined us as well. So just wanted to open it up. Uhuru.
Yeah, I couldn't unmute or start my video on my own, so here I am.
Great.
This notion of qualified immunity, which keeps expanding, means that the laws that are on the books in which people have placed faith and reliance, the more privileged you are, the more that seems to be embraced, really no longer mean anything. And virtually all sectors of police activity. Post hoc, you may have noticed this phenomena with the primarily white left activities, Occupy and so on. The police come in, kettle them as they call it, mace them, run cars into them, beat them, drag them to jail, hold them, move them between police stations, then release them when whatever the particular disruptive activity, as they view it, is over. I mean, there's criminal assault, there's false arrest, there's arguably kidnapping involved in some of this. There's a number of offenses perpetrated, but no cops go to jail. No charges are pressed against privileged by and large, but no cops go to jail. When you get to communities of color, you know, for the most part, they never even bother with the formality of dropping charges because it's just a given that the police are immune from any consequences of their action. You can cite the law, you can recite the law, you can publicize the law, and nothing happens. Now, I don't know how, in basic terms, you would define a police state, but that meets the standard definition. The police function as an autonomous entity answerable only to those in charge. That's an authoritarian structure. The enforcement mechanism is brutal and blunt as it needs to be to accomplish the desired mission. That's at the grassroots level, if you want to call it that, of police. That's the individual cop who would be on the beat if they still assigned beats. Okay. And the attitude, their understanding of their function is exactly the same as the FBI officials who testified at the church committee decades ago, was mentioned earlier, when they were asked whether legal parameters and restraints entered into their conscious considerations of how to proceed with an operation. They answered, not at all. Not at all. What they entered into their calibrations of appropriate action was what would get the job done. And the job, of course, is to maintain the order which is being opposed, whether it's by occupied or whether it's by the Puerto Rican Liberation Movement or by the Black Liberation Movement or the American Indian Movement or any other entity bound up in what could be described as anti-colonial struggle. The colonial order is to be maintained. The cops don't even have a vernacular to encompass this. They don't need it. They know who's in charge. That they serve the interests of those in charge. No questions. End of story. You know? How you fix that? People want to look at filing suit against them, and okay. It's not going to fix it because it's the very system. The judges understand it's the same as the cops, although they're more articulate about it, and they'll deny it more thoroughly. But there it is. You know, you can try citizen's arrest on a cop, as was done in Teorina case in New Mexico in the late 60s, but there's no judge there to say that anyone that attempts to interfere with a citizen's arrest does so at their own peril, even if they are a cop. That's gone. That judge was removed decades ago. The things we think we know, what we're taught in civics class and all the rest of it, it's just a fantasy. We got to understand the situation clearly, know your enemy, understand the terms of struggle, and proceed accordingly.
Right on, comrade.
If I might intervene briefly, thank you, Comrade Churchill. You know, I have held in my hand this beautiful thing called La Constitución República Socialista de Cuba, right? The comrades have rewritten the law of the land, right? And Latin American revolutions are doing this as well. Here, within the confines of the settler colonial project and mission to control us, you know, imagine a world where us as colonized people revolt and rewrite that very same law of the land called the Constitution that everybody opposed. And you write into it things that are about people versus private property, right? Because we know the history was all based around private property. It was codifying the ability to extract our resources, whether human or land, right? So what if we call for a constitutional assembly to rewrite the quote constitution that governs quote the land, right? And allows you know, apparatuses to exist. You know, that is revolution. Revolution is that, is us organizing ourselves as a self-determined people, guided by principles and mission. If you go down through the Uhuru APSP party line, Unión del Barrio, if you blend them in, we're talking about humanity. We're talking about taking care of our people versus what exists now. And so I kind of just wanted to comment on that within the confines of like qualified immunity and, you know, the police state, all that, like all of that is going to live truncated into this state apparatus as it exists. And, you know, our vision, our dream, our future is way beyond that because we're grounded in humanity. Comrade.
Thank you.
Was it 1972 when the Black Panther Party held the Constitutional Convention then, and was it Philadelphia, wasn't it? Yeah, Uhuru.
Uhuru. Wow, what a profound discussion. Very exciting today. We just have one more comment question that we can close out this this part from Gabriella, and she is saying, besides Tampa, are there any other ways to help Uhuru 3 in other parts of Florida? Asking from Miami. Well, absolutely. And first of all, we do want you and everyone to come to the trial September 3rd, but also we will be speaking in Miami on June 29th. On June 29th, we're going to be, the Uhuru 3 will be speaking in Miami. So maybe, Jesse, would you be able to put in the chat like where that would be? So Comrade Gabriella can know, and you can also go to handsoffuhuru.org. We list the events that are coming up. And if that isn't up there yet, it will be soon.
And Comrade Gabriella, I just want to say that we will be doing what we can from here to try and construct like a Florida-wide Hands Off Uhuru movement that would have the responsibility of getting the word out throughout the state of Florida, organizing transportation, winning people to come into Tampa, educating people, fundraising, and the whole bit. So we want to bring the entire state of Florida into Tampa. So that's something that we're talking about, Comrade Gabriella, trying to organize as well. Uhuru.
Yes, Uhuru. And just to say that and it's such an honor again to have you know, just Unión del Barrio on, and that the Uhuru 3 will be in Los Angeles and San Diego on next week.
Yeah.
Next week. So we're really excited about that and seeing all of you in person. So maybe we have the dates on that.
Yes, we will. We do have the dates on that. And I did want to just appreciate that question from Gabriella, as you know, many of those who organizations and individuals who support this fight back because of, because of its implications are actually also joining us. And I did want to, before we close out the really dynamic, Q&A, also acknowledge some of our, supporters and others who are joining us. And I really wanted to give a shout out to Sheila Hamanaka, who is here with us from Pacifica. Thank you, comrade, for being on, as well as Brenda Lopez with the U.S. Hands Off Cuba Committee in LA and Cleveland, Ohio. Also wanted to appreciate our comrades in South Africa and in Namibia, as well as Attorney Jennifer Jones, who is also on, Marsha Coleman out of Bio. The list goes on. I also wanted to shout out Peter Endicott. These are our comrades, as we said, up in Canada, really putting this out there, and comrade Youssef Doucette from Joko Collective. All of these organizations who have helped to, either hold events or fundraisers, or just make the demand to drop the charges on the Uhuru 3. I wanted to appreciate you, comrades, as well as Musa Basi from Black Men Build in LA. This is the kind of fight back that we have, going on, where we bring it all under the banner. So really want to salute today's dynamic program. And I don't know if there's any updates, anything else that we should say before we move to announcements, but I'd like to turn it back to the comrades on the ground in St. Louis before we do that. Uhuru.
Well, two things. Yeah, comment Jesse has something.
Just to point out, Yabinga donated $50 and said Uhuru from Binga and family.
Uhuru, Binga. Very exciting. Thank you very much. And one last.
Well, I wanted to.
Okay, go ahead.
I want comrade Marsha Adebayo, if you can put the information in into the comment section. So that people can know how to connect with and support that incredibly important struggle, because this is a common struggle that we experience as colonized people everywhere. There's a fight that's in the DMV, the Bethesda coalition, where they're now paving over graveyards, graves of African people, and these comrades have been involved in the struggle forever, fighting seriously, viciously, and comrade Marsha Adebayo, who is on, has been a leader of that struggle. And as we know, we can talk about sites all over this country where similar things happen to Africans and indigenous people as well. So if you would, that would be helpful. There it is, Bethesda Cemetery Coalition.net. Uhuru, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for raising that. And I know this could be a whole other webinar, but Gabriella asked, what are some of the ways the African People's Socialist Party has built dual power? So that one.
Come to St. Louis.
That's an amazing, you need to come see it. And you need to come see it here in St. Louis is one example.
I would hope people would come. I mean, we talk about this all the time. But there's one thing for people to hear it and then to see it, to see the fundamental transformation. You'll see why this war is being made against us, just as in Palestine and Gaza. Just the transformation we brought to North St. Louis, which in 1972 was given a project called Team 4 Plan, which was the entity that created that. What entity created it? The Rand Corporation that created this for them, and it was a policy of destruction of the Black community here. They call it benign neglect. So it was not even just a matter of neglecting it, it was a major war. And so you see a devastated community. More than 30,000 Africans have recently been pushed out of St. Louis. They intend to make St. Louis white, majority white, changing the demographics, stealing resources, and we made a fundamental change here, and that's part of what the basis for them attacking us. So please contact us and come to St. Louis. Meet you in St. Louis. And I think there's a song like that. Led by Comrade Deputy Chair Owners and Yeshitela, who was just mentioned, Uhuru.
Yes, and you can learn more about this also by going to the blackpowerblueprint.org. You can see videos and updates of the projects over the years on their YouTube channel. Follow them on Facebook. This is how you continue to see what power in the hands of the working class, economic and political power looks like. And St. Louis is a great example, and the party's 50 years of history as well. So thank you so much. And go to St. Pete. You will see many of the institutions there as well. And this is going to be the heart of where we are going to be on the ground just across the bridge from Tampa. So, prepare for the trial. You can support by going to handsoffforhuru.org/trial. This is where you can also, again, sign up for this fight back and join any committee, where you want to help us build and get people to Tampa as well. So thank you so much for that question and your participation, Gabriella, and everybody on this call. I just really wanted to salute this amazing webinar. And I know we are going to move into our announcements fairly soon. If there's can just be maybe one quick update on where we are with reaching our goal, then we can sum up if there's any updates.
And also, Gabriella says, all love and solidarity, Chairman. You're wonderful and amazing.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Yeah.
Uhuru, comrades.
5,150.
Wow.
5,150 raised. We had a goal of $2,000 and we surpassed that, comrades. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
It's not what we say, it's what we do. And we did that, everyone. I really want to salute today's really dynamic panel. I want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I want to also salute Professor Ward Churchill, Don Lawson of the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee, as well as the statement from Jennifer Jones, one of the attorneys from the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee. I want to thank Attorney Michael Kuzma for joining us on today, as well as the comrades from Unión del Barrio, in particular, Comrade Chavo Romero, who joined us as well, and all your participation, all the donors who helped us make today's event a success. And again, comrades, we are winning, we will win. And so just to take a quick look at our announcements for the upcoming months and overall, we want to encourage everybody to go to Hands Off Uhuru, handsoffUHURU.org. We still are finding more people signing the emergency pledge. So please, if you have not signed it, sign up for the emergency pledge to be alerted of any updates, of the attacks on the Uhuru 3. Sign up for emails on our website and bring your skills and volunteer. Again, we are building for the trial. So if you go to handsoffforhuru.org/trial, you will click the commitment form to commit or volunteer for this building up for the trial. And again, I really want to salute our volunteers who are the heart and soul of this fight back, people who have donated in terms of helping us to organize events, doing outreach, fundraising, legal support, and public relations. All of these areas are an important fight back. And so we encourage you to go to our website as well to learn about our upcoming events. We are excited for the Uhuru 3, who will be touring in Southern California, in Los Angeles and San Diego. If you are in this area or you are nearby, come. This is starting next Thursday, May 23rd through May 25th. This is a part of this series of events to celebrate also African Liberation Day. And so we say victory to the African nation, hands off the Uhuru 3. More details can be found on the Hands Off Uhuru website, as well as by going to Uhuru 3 tour.eventbrite.com. One of the upcoming events next Thursday, May 23rd in Los Angeles. We want to encourage you again to go to Uhuru 3 tour.eventbrite.com to register for this event, where you will see the Uhuru 3, as well as solidarity statements from some of our sponsors that you see here. And we will also celebrate African Liberation Day in San Diego, May 25th. And this, again, can be found on that website, where we will also have some culture performances, vendors, keynote presentations, and solidarity statements. We're really excited. So for all these events, go to handsoffforhuru.org/events, check out our events calendar, and add your own events if you are also, holding events, in this fight back, and you want us to be aware of them as well. So thank you, comrades. Again, we say all out for the trial. Hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. Drop the charges on the Uhuru 3. We are winning. We will win. Venceremos. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Uhuru.